Shout out to HMP TV. You are tuned in right now on the galaxies, in the ethers. This is Lara Lee, aka Floetic Lara, bigging up all my soldiers out there. And we say, build soldiers, future holders, who know how to carry on a craft and cultures. Give the next generation a firm foundation to build on. Build tall, build strong, build young soldiers, future holders, who know how to carry on a craft and cultures. Give the next generation a firm foundation to build on. Build tall, build strong. Yeah! Peace!
We're at HMP TV and we're at Savory Remembrance. Call.
This is HMP TV over here at Trafalgar Square. We are with Chazelle. Now, she is the organizer of this event. And how I came about this event was simply by a flyer which handed to me over Brother Davis's event, the Victoria Park event. I received a flyer. When I received something being passed around on WhatsApp saying all people involved in media spread the word and make sure the media gets down here. And here we are, the mainstream media, as opposed to the alternative media, which is London Live and ITV and all those people. The mainstream media was here to cover the event, but I'm glad I'm able to catch you because I really wanted to find out. Obviously, this is brand new, but what was the motivation? I mean, I've got some idea, but what was the motivation, and also the hard work what went into being here and doing this today? Because this doesn't look like something you just throw up overnight.
So the motivation is surrounding the fact that there's an International Slavery Remembrance Day, which is August the 23rd, and nobody really knows about it, particularly in the UK. It passes by largely unnoticed, and when you look at other memorial days, for instance, the Remembrance Day or Holocaust Memorial Day, we sort of all know about that and it's covered in the media and everything else. So we thought it was time our ancestors were honoured and honoured correctly and honoured by us rather than anyone else. We thought it was time that they were remembered, they deserve to be remembered and their story deserves to be told. And so that's sort of what pushed the organisations to come about and us to put on this memorial service today.
So is it an amalgamation of various different organisations, or is this an organisation like an umbrella organisation, or is this solely coming from yourself?
Okay, so the event was put on by Slavery Remembrance. It was by Slavery Remembrance alone. However, the organisation, it's a very new organisation. It literally started in February. So the first thing we did was obviously make history by holding this memorial service. But the intention is to work with other organisations. We're very much of the opinion that the massive battles that we have to fight, we cannot fight them alone. We cannot fight them as an individual organisation. And we're very conscious of not starting something else that's already being done. It's about uniting and working on our strengths and working with people on their strengths. So yeah, we very much want to act as an umbrella organisations and work with other organisations in the future.
And in regards to the future, because many people come to these events and they get involved and they cheer and they put their hands up and the black fist comes up and so on and so forth. What is the next step after that in regards to moving forward? What is the aims and objectives? Obviously it's to remember year in and year out, but what is the work in between those 365 days?
Yeah, so the organisation wasn't set up solely to hold a memorial service. That's just one of the many things we plan to do. So the ethos of the organisation is to educate, celebrate and inspire, and that's to educate people on the rich history of Africa and its diaspora before, during and after the slave trade. And it's also there to, what we want to do is challenge people's views as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. So challenge people's views on Africa and its diaspora as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. So we're looking at racial stereotypes and racism and things like that. And so we want to get workshops into schools, have a whole education program set up. We want to have our own sort of classes taught at the weekends. There's lots and lots and lots that we want to do, and it's way more than the memorial service. That's just going to be a part of a big catalogue of work that we're planning on doing. Okay,
so by the time this comes around next year, we would have seen the manifestation of a few of the other bits and pieces which you're hoping to start to roll out, so people realise it's not just a one-day thing; it's a 365 days a year program.
I absolutely hope so, but you're really putting pressure on me there.
Okay.
I mean, it's really new, and as I said, we need to make connections and build those connections and build those. So I absolutely hope that by this time next year, there's other stuff that will have been happening, and there should at least be one or two other things. But it's a big job, and there's a lot of work to be done. And some of the things that we're going to try and get into, we're going to hit brick walls, and we're going to have to fight, and it's not going to be an overnight thing, and it may not even be. I'm expecting battles, because what we're trying to get into the educational systems, what we're trying to get into schools, is something that's not in there at the moment, and it's not as though we're the first people saying that we need to have this in the curriculum. So, but you will definitely see movements. You will definitely see things happening, but
well, as long as people support the movement, and the thing is, you started off with a bang. For a relatively new company, you're here at Trafalgar Square, a good turnout. Obviously, it was mentioned, but obviously more people could have turned out. But there's other different things going on. But these things were mentioned, and we'll highlight them when we go to broadcast. But the point is, you had, in such a prominent place, it made an impact first time round. This is you will remember Slavery Remembrance Day.
The first question we want to ask you is, what prompted you? What gave you the gumption, the fight, the desire to demand an apology from the Queen of United Kingdom, Great Britain, the country that is so responsible for our African Holocaust? What made you stand up at in 2007 during the Westminster service commemorating the abolition of slavery?
Wow. All I can say is that when I was there, it was a bizarre scenario. You kind of had a situation where you was in Westminster Abbey. You had the three pillars of the institution that were responsible for the Ma'afa, or the Mangamese, African enslavement. You had the church, you had the monarchy, and you had, I forgot the last one, the church, the monarchy, and the politicians, the states. Thank you for everyone. And I was there reporting. I was actually there invited as a journalist to report on something historic that was going to happen. So I was there with my notepad. What I didn't realise was that I was going to be that historic thing that was going to be going on. And people say, was it planned? What was it and stuff like that? Well, the thing was that I just followed my spirit, and there was a key point during that nonsense that was going on, where they were asking us to get on our knees and beg for God's forgiveness for enslaving our ancestors. And it was a very bizarre way it was done. People don't always know. It's like what they do, they have a program guide, and it's got all the things that what's going to happen. And then in red at the bottom, they tell you what to do, to stand, to rise, to clap, all this sort of stuff. But no one watching it sees it. So they were broadcasting this around the world. And they were going to have, there's around 2,000 African people inside that place. And I read it, and I was in shock. And I looked around, and I realised, as the British monarch was sitting there, like this, and Blair was sitting up there with himself, looking like that. And I realised that our people were going to get on our knees and beg God forgiveness for enslaving our ancestors. And so that was the kind of thing where I had to just get up and say, you know what, I'm out of here, laters. And it was I can't explain it. It's like, if you, one of my favourite scuff movies is like, Can we get Rise Up, Bro.Toyin for that, please? It's like you hear something, you hear your ancestors calling, you hear them telling you, you're not supposed to be here. And so what happens, like I'm there, and of course you see, you've got little red dots because they've got all security, and they're looking to take you out, but all you know is, this is a devil place, I've got to come out. And like there's a film, one of my favourite scuff movies called Born Identity, and as I get up, what happens is that security rushes you because they think that you're going to start blowing them up and all kind of madness. And it's really funny because this is when they say that ancestors are behind us, they're beside us all the time. I get up, and with that, I don't know how I knew I knew there was someone there. So I went like this, and I flung him. And then he went mashing into the crowd. So everyone went, ooh, scary African moment. And so they all rushed me. So they're dropping me down to the floor. And I don't know if I'm an elder, so I know you're a bit young. There's a series called The Incredible Hulk. And they said David Banner.
Yeah.
So I'm down there, and there's around 4 men on top of me. But the adrenaline just pumped. So I just got up, and they just flew out. So they didn't know what to do. They just didn't know what to do. And I did lose my temper, but I was still set in my mind. I had to come out of this place. So I mean, I can go on about that for Africa, but I left, they arrested me, and I had to give thanks to many of the wonderful people that I'm seeing here who came out in unity and in support. In fact, it was that National Gallery, I remember, we went to on a walk, and they wouldn't let us go in there because they said that there's too many African people. It was some nonsense about that. It's for the public. It's like, even if all of us today went to go inside there, we are the public. And there's always these rules where they separate us into the public and the others. Well, we ain't the others. From the moment that we built this country, from the moment that our blood, sweat enriched this country, from the moment that we pay any tax, from the moment you imprison our children, that you taser us, that you kill us, we are that public. And if we hold this place on lockdown, we hold it on lockdown. So I think, I don't know if that answers the question.
That does wonderfully well.
And I think if you have not seen any footage, you can go online to check out that very, very inspirational clip. I think if you just type in
The Walk, everything on YouTube, it's called The Walk. There's a film, it covers the whole thing.
Rise up in African love for
Let us therefore confess our sins in penitence and faith to our gracious Father, who ransoms us, heals, restores, and forgives.
Disrespecting my ancestors, I'll make it clear in this district of our
Most merciful God, I confess to you before the whole company of heaven, and to you, my sisters and brothers, that I have sinned in thought, word, and deed, in my action and in my silence, through prejudice or ignorance, or my own deliberate fault. As we meet together before you, gracious Father, we look at the past and we lament. We look at the present and we pray. Forgive us our sins. Renew our fellowship in your Spirit, and raise us to new life in Christ. Amen. May the God, who in his grace seeks out and restores those who are lost, pardon and deliver you from all your sins, strengthen you in all goodness, and lead you home to eternal life in him. Amen.
You may hear some noise there. It was a disturbance. The service goes on.
Let go of me! You said you're going to let go of me. Let go of me! No, I'm going that way. Let go of me. Let go of me! Can everyone let go of me?
You can see the congregation looking over to where there was, as I could see it, a single protester. We knew at the beginning, we said so, that this was, for some people, controversial.
I want all the Christians who are Africans to walk that way. Think about the middle passage. All of you Africans. Let go of me. Let go of me. I said I'm going to walk that way in front of me. I'm not, move away. Give me some space. I'm going this way. I'm going this way. If you're going to have this, let's go. If you are going to have this thing in the name of my ancestors, and you do not have the dignity, Mr. Blair, to make an apology, if the word sorry is so hard to say, and you, the Queen,
Can you let me go? I'll punch you out. You're a disgrace. You should not be here. If there's any Christians who are Africans, you should be walking out here with them. You have disgraced our ancestors. Millions of us are in the Atlantic Ocean without burial. Not a mention of Samuel Shaw. Not a mention of Nanny. Not a mention of Queen Zinga. And you Africans, I think to the British, but you Africans are still sitting here, watching this and leaving me alone. Leaving me alone to do the work you have no knowledge to do. Now let go!
As the Queen leaves, she'll be laying flowers at Wilberforce's memorial. One of many memorials to abolitionists here at the Abbey.
Rise up in African love for our brother, Akala!
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. How you feeling? Nah, I said good afternoon, brothers and sisters. How you feeling? All right, we haven't got too long left, so I'm going to bless you with a little acapella and then go on. This one is a song we call Maangamizi. And of course, for those who don't know, Maangamizi is a Swahili word. It translates roughly to Holocaust, great disaster, intentionally caused brutality, things of that nature. It's important that we define the terms of our own suffering ourselves, using our own linguistic ideas, using our own conceptions, etc. Because the war of words or the war of definition has long continued in this country. The war of abolition, you know, the only household name when it comes to the massive enslavement of African people in this country is William Wilberforce. You'd almost think no one in Britain ever benefited. We've only chose to remember one dude, and even that dude's role is very interesting, but we haven't got time to get into that today. It goes like this. How many lives will be lost to the Maangamizi? It's way bigger than the pain that I place on the CD. If I told you all the truth, would you really believe me? It's the Maangamizi. It's the Maangamizi. Maangamizi meaning African Holocaust, because we paid a hell of a cost and don't really want what was lost. And the process ain't ever stopped since black civilization dropped for internal greed and external plot. The same ones that taught the ancient Greeks, Greece and Rome helped bring to their knees, then Islam spread across northern Africa. With slavery and massacres, too many hurt, refused to convert, spread south and west, a people dispersed. Christianity is not alone in using race and religion for power to expand. Desert caravans took slaves across sand, where they staged the revolt of the Zanj. Enemies always invented mythologies, curse of Ham, so-called prophecy. After the migrations, there was some reinstatement of autonomous nations. Then floating on the waves of the seas came a plague, a genocidal disease. With arms and heads, they looked like men, but really they were just dogs on two legs. When they first came, some of our people said go. Most welcomed them into our homes. We didn't know they had hearts of stone, frozen by Western Europe's cold. Also, there were scumbags among us, willing to work for white conquerors' honors. With that collaboration began the largest forced migration in the history of nations. How many lives will be lost to the Maangamizi? It's way bigger than the pain that I place on the CD. If I told you all the truth, would you really believe me? It's the Maungamisi, it's the Maungamisi. How many millions dead at the bottom of the ocean, thrown overboard like property stolen or jumped overboard rather than be stolen, a mother with a baby in arms? Hold on, what awaited was not just enslavement, but a genocidal impulse craving. They committed unspeakable abuses to make a nigga from an African human. Took a woman ready to give birth, tied her limbs to 4 posts held firm. In the main square made every slave watch, covered dirt and raw meat off a pack of dogs. And if anyone watching, even a relative, made a sound, killed them for the hell of it. This was every day, not the exception. The science of gynecology was perfected on black women, no anesthetic. They said a nigga bitch couldn't feel pain pathetic. Hang a man from a tree, cut off his penis, force people to eat their own feces, literally put people in zoos, in a cage, chimpanzee, black human, ape. And it was upon this atrocity that Europe became the dominant economy. And now they play games, pretend it's about names. Nah, it's a scheme for unequal trade. Imagine the largest companies today, if all of their employees got no pay.
This is HMP TV. We are at Slavery Remembrance, and I'm here with a sister who, hey, she's about this. Sister Sankara, how you doing? And what brought you down here today?
I think this is a really important event. I'm not ashamed of what my ancestors had to go through. I'm not ashamed of what our martyrs had to die for. I'm proud of the uprisers, of the upsetters, the ones who interrupted the system of slavery, and this is what I'm here to remember today, those who sacrificed.
And the largest wars of humans were fought between people of Western Europe. So by your rationale, it's cool to kill French men. They kill Germans that look like them. Absurd, right? But when your skin's white, different set of rules you can't abide by. Dark suffering is not humanized, no surprise, we still see ourselves through their eyes. And darkies became legally human during the course of my parents' life. And the freedoms we have only occur because the ancestors spilled the blood to the earth. Is it changed that much? Are you so sure? The world's darker people still the most poor? So it's our task to put an end to this. Even those like me with a heritage mixed, if a knife's in your back, 9 inches, and it's only been pulled out 6, when the wound starts healing and we stop bleeding or bleaching, can it begin to fix? When the plague of self-hate's no longer a weight so great it pushes you to kill one another. When we put a stop to false charity, they kill with one hand and give with the other. When the IMF World Bank, along with their puppets, no longer strangle our nations. When the invaders don't have military bases in so many places. When the jail cells not packed with black bats and the gats and the crack and the longer fractors. When we celebrate your self-determination, not a few token bit part actors. When the truth is told and there is the dignity to remember the dead. As long as they're still in the past, means they have the intention of doing it again. How many lives will be lost to the Maungamisi? It's way bigger than the pain that I place on the CD. If I told you all the truth, would you really believe me? It's the Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My name's Akala. It's been a pleasure. Please welcome back to the stage to take us out this afternoon, African Revolution. Make some noise, ladies and gentlemen.
And the final question we have to ask is, what are your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter?
Wow. Black Lives Matter. It's quite torn, because as an activist, I support any movement of young people that's fighting against injustice. So when they locked down Heathrow the other day, I was all for it. And I think it's ridiculous that anybody can say, why do you need Black Lives Matter? I mean, I use the term African Lives Matter, but I understand what they mean, Black Lives Matter. In America, they have All Lives Matter. They have Blue Lives Matter, which is the beast. That's the term they use for them. And it came over here, which a lot of American things come over here, but sometimes we have to be careful. There are people trying to hijack that agenda. So I've been to some of the protests, I've been to some of the organising meetings, and not everybody there is African-centred, because black politically means anybody that's oppressed, not just African people. So it means that you can have, well, I'm not going to go into naming all the different groups. You can have other people hijacking the work that our ancestors did. But we need a Black Lives Matter movement, because the situation that's happened the other day with our brother being tasered, that's very important that we understand that situation. Our brother was ill, okay? He had dialysis. He pulled it out of his neck or his you know what I mean, over here. He'd attacked his father, and people were saying, well, he deserved to go down. But that wasn't the case. A police officer came to help someone who was mentally unwell. And we've got to understand that. And those police officers tasered him once, apparently they tasered him twice, and tasered him 3 times. On top of that, they kicked him. Okay? So we've got to understand that until people understand, it's a Premiership footballer as well.
It's an ex-Premiership footballer who used to play for Aston Villa back in the 90s.
So what happens is that we have to understand is that while people are saying all lives matter, clearly the message hasn't got through to those in uniforms. And the big problem we have, I think you might have heard the news the other day where they're saying that being a young African is like living in a different world in the UK. You've got to think that 10 years ago, the CRE was abolished, mission accomplished, racism over. Obama was elected, America is now post-racial. And then you've got a clown, that guy with the funny thing living on his head, Trump, running around telling people that, you know what I mean, he's going to kick out all the Muslims and that every African American should vote for him. What have you got to lose? Black Lives Matter, why it's so important is because it's something that's focused specifically on African life, or it's supposed to be. The danger is it can move like the Occupy movement, where you have a fantastic movement, a fantastic idea, and because everyone is jumping on it and not being respectful of the reason why it was set up, it becomes a wishy-washy movement. All I will say is that when a Black Lives Matter event happens, even if it is dominated by socialist worker people, refugee advocates, and they've got fantastic causes, we need to be there. Because the last event I went to was called A Day of Rage. And I turned up there with my daughter. There were 70% Europeans, 20% Africans, and 10% Asian people there. That is for a movement, an event called A Day of Rage, Black Lives Matter. I can't knock the Europeans who were there supporting Black Lives Matter. But what I will say is that all of us need to make sure we push our people to go there and support it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Uncle Toyin. Give thanks, Uncle Toyin, for breaking down for us a few and making it very clear for us a few of those very key important points. Yeah, we do have to move on, unfortunately, because it's a tight schedule and we have so many more people for you to see as well.
Well, thank you very much.
But thank you so much. Rise up, Toyin, Agbetu.
Rise up. The incredible Jonze D.
Peace and love, everybody. Can we just put one hand in the air right now and close it like this? And let's just be like this, just feel how that feels, yeah? All of us together, yeah? Every single one of us together like this. This is power. Enough respect, people. Okay. So I want to do a piece about being in England. I personally like London. Don't know about you lot. But the smiles on your faces tell me that you're enjoying yourself right now. So we love London, don't we? I love everything about London. I like the food. Oh, I love my fish and chips. And I love jellied eels too. And I like my pie and mash. And I hope West Ham go through. And I love old Miss Dot Cotton. And I love my English rose. And I like to sing with a pearly king, all born and bred in Bow. Oh, I love my fish and chips, and I love jellied eels too, and I like my pie and mash, and I hope West Ham go through, and I love old Miss Dot Cotton, and I love my English rose. And I like to sing with a pearly king, all born and bred in Bow. Oh, I love my fish and chips. But something smells fishy as I get older. Now the chips are on my shoulder. That's cool, but it's getting colder. And I hope we stand, go through, and I love my pie and mash. But the tiniest piece of the pie teases my eye. Through the glass ceiling I reach to the sky. But these bloodsuckers keep bleeding me dry and asking me why I steal and lie when income support is just about eat and get by. I've got GCSEs plus degrees of experiences. But the more Aryan kids get, the more serious gigs. And I don't want to be hearing this shit about be grateful for various bits of stale pie falling from the table of the greedy and the hateful. That's cool. It's just getting colder. And I like old Miss Dot Cotton, but Miss Dot Cotton, are you for real? Cause you're treating I like I should miss cotton fields. The truth comes out when you're pissed on your drink, harping about Darwin. You lot are the missing link. Reads these tabloid mysteries about my history, justifying your paranoid misdeeds. I'm misjudged as misclutches to her handbag. With mistrust I've seen ya, blaming us for miscellaneous misdemeanors. Miss Cotton has been miscast as a misfit of society's misconceptions, but they're unrealistic. You're mystified by my natural mystic. But misdissed it, cause Mrs. Misanthropic biopic vision done missed it. Now you misinterpret my nature as misbehavior. Miss Cotton, you ain't real, but that's cool. It's just getting a bit colder. Ooh, Rosie Lee. Rosie Lee, she's close to me, or is that the fallacy? Posing me as a trophy of black sexuality. Learning the lingo of this black mandingo cause you're horny. Legs around my head like a crown that's mad thorny. Crucified for concrete jungle fever, this divine geezer fertilizes Caucasian bloodlines with 9 ether. Your family don't want it, mine either. Confusing and abusing our offspring as we watch her mind leave her. And black women ought to stare at the disheveled petaled rose that cannot plait her daughter's hair. That's cold, but it's getting colder. The pearly king, I nearly came a cropper, cause as the truth unfurls, there's no pearls, you're a copper. And who's dead in police custody, alias murder, fabricating evidence to stop us from taking this further? I break the long arm of the law in 3 places. Young black males don't beat cases. Too many cheating racists who prefer to remain nameless, killing blacks on a regular basis and saying that he used his shoelaces. The pearly queen's an actress, a devil in a black dress, hiding her pearly whites at the sight of another black death. The pearly king, he's a pawn in this game of race hate. Sending my mates to the pearly gates and then he escapes. Well, that's cold and it's getting colder. Born and bred in Bow. I gotta go.
Artists work 24/7. I use sleep as an opportunity to astral body travel through Stargate portals. Waking up in the middle of the night to write the scenes I've seen in my dreams. I go deep. Like a submarine, my purpose is to dive below the surface. To be specific, the great depths of the Atlantic is where I spend my dream time, studying the remnants of Atlantis. But before I go further, Let me explain why the materialistic visions of popping Dom Perignon and using women's asses as champagne glasses of impasses feeling the fast and grasp me left me empty. The opening of a black hole within my insides when I tried to do a 9 to 5, get drunk on a Friday night and live a generic life. Listen, we are here for a greater purpose. So I was faced with standing in a place of no return at the edge of the cliff. I looked down from the frightening heights of Mount Everest, took a deep breath in preparation, before hurtling into the infinity of the rabbit hole for this eternal journey to master the inner and outer worlds. Has no destination but a free spirit yearns for more, so I must explore. So I meditate, sat in a Buddha pose, I rose, blooming into a higher state of being. The ancient gods recognized me as one of them before me. They opened up multi-dimensional gateways. A brain operating at 10% of its capacity cannot get to grips with concepts beyond this physical paradigm. How I appear in more than one place at the same time. My mind began to expand as the unknown strands of my DNA unraveled mysteries from my ancestry, rooting throughout history to the first divine beings that walked this planet. I can now fathom the power I feel every time I write. A solar ball of flames rotates in my palms. Now I'm able to create. Listen, we're all too great to self-deprecate. What fear is there when you see yourself macrosized in the skies? We are stars on earth in human form, and my poetry is a mirror to show you just how much you all shine. And shine we do. We can never be held back, and we're taking back what is ours. Give thanks, HMPTV. Nai.
I have a question as well. So this is officially Slavery Remembrance Day, but you don't want to use that term. You don't want to call it that. You want to call it African Remembrance.
Well, yes. There's many reasons why I don't use the word slavery. First of all, our ancestors were never slaves. They were people that were enslaved. And it sounds like I'm being pedantic, but I'm not. It's a very big difference. From the moment, see, people talk about reparations, and it's wonderful seeing Sister Toya up here. But from the moment the European came, in fact, it was the Arab first, but that's another discussion. From the moment, we're in England right now, we're through with Europe. From the moment the first European came on the soil and tried to take us, and we said no, we started our reparations movement. And those were Africans. So wherever we go, whenever I go home to the Caribbean, whether I'm in Jamaica, if I'm in St. Lucia, wherever I'm going, those are African people living in the Caribbean. If you look in America, those are African people living in the US. If you go to Brazil, those are African people living, they're not Afro-Brazilians. Afro is a hairstyle, which unfortunately I lost a long time ago. They're African Brazilians, they're African Americans. I can't really quite say African British, but unfortunately I know my nationality, I was born here, but I'm an African man. And when we're talking about remembering our ancestors, they're Africans. One of the problems when we use slavery memory, and I'm not criticising it because it's something we need to do, and it's one of the fantastic energies Sister Chazelle's put together to bring us here, is that sometimes you get some imbeciles who will come in and say, my ancestors were enslaved by the Romans, can I come on the stage? And you kind of had to lock them off. The reality of the situation is our ancestors were enslaved. They were Africans, they were enslaved in the Caribbean, in the Americas, and when you look at colonialism, they were enslaved on the motherland as well. And so slavery doesn't cover the entirety of colonialism, neo-colonialism, enslavement. So that's the reason why I use that.
Excellent answer.
Okay, we're here at the Slavery Remembrance in Trafalgar Square. We're just going to find out of people in regards to whether the term slavery should be remembered, or should we remember the wickedness what Europeans done to us, so we can put the onus on the Europeans to remember their wickedness as opposed to us remembering the wickedness what was done to us. So I'm going to put that question to you, my brother. Should we have slavery remembered, so we remember the slavery and that we was people who was enslaved, or should we start to change the terminology in regards, and this is not addressing or attacking what's been put here today, it's a very positive event, but maybe start to look at the terminology, and instead of remembering slavery, remember what Europeans have done. So we start posting out and putting out to the public a reminder to Europeans of the wickedness that they've done to us as a people and continually keep doing to us as a people. Which side of the fence would you be on?
Alright, but I'll be real with you. I think it's a little from column A, a little from column B, and I'm not trying to be a politician or anything like that. But I honestly do think when you look at the amount of different types of people that are here, we are all at different scales in terms of our knowledge, in terms of what happened. Therefore, for some, slavery is going to be the right word for them because that's where their mind's at. And then other people, they're going to be on the other level. Do you understand? Certain men will say, well, we were enslaved. You don't use the term slavery, use the term enslaved. Now that's a certain level of understanding. The one problem that I have, and one thing I'm finding in modern culture, is that the term slavery is being used for many other things that once in the past, if you spoke about slavery when I was growing up in school, in like the 90s and that, you thought of Africans, black people, cargo ships and all this kind of stuff. Now when you look at the media, especially modern media, what you're seeing is that they're talking about slavery, but they're talking about prostitution and the trafficking of women around the, and it's like they kind of, and in a way I kind of look at that and I'm like, whoa, what are you trying to rob the word from me? Are you trying to give it a different meaning? So I think it's very, very complex, brother, to be fair.
It's an interesting question and it makes me giggle, but quite frankly I remember the wickedness every day because I'm still living the wickedness. Like we said, the Ma'afa and the please say the word for me, the
Ma'angamizi.
That's a part of our life every single day. We don't have the luxury to remember white wickedness. It's current. We're living it. And so, yes, I do believe that there should be days and holidays and specific times when we focus on us, on our ancestors, on their feelings, on what they were trying to do to survive into the next generation and generations afterwards.
I'm not a fan of the word slavery. I would prefer to use the term enslavement because we weren't slaves. We were mathematicians, we were astrologers, we were farmers, we were traders. That's who we are, and we were enslaved Africans. And I'm not too sure about putting the focus on the Europeans. I don't feel today is about the Europeans, or for me it's more to do with us remembering what happened to our ancestors, us not forgetting, us honouring our ancestors, not just today but every day. Me myself, I have an altar, I go to my altar, I pay homage to my ancestors. Today is a very special day because it's been done collectively as a group, but hopefully people will walk away from this and attempt to develop a deeper relationship with their ancestors and learn more about what happened to them, not necessarily just in the terms of our enslavement, because the miseducation system, the westernized miseducation system, they do put forward the idea that our history only started during enslavement, when it didn't. We need to know before that. Obviously, yes, we do need to know about enslavement, and it is a very terrible part of, it's not even our history, it's his story that has been perpetuated onto us, but unfortunately we are still living out the effects. Post-traumatic enslavement syndrome is still very much in effect. There have been so many different types of trauma that happens to our ancestors that have been passed down through our DNA that we are now still perpetuating to ourselves and to other people, that need to be addressed and healed and cleared so that we can move forward. So yes, that's the answer that I have to your question.
Okay, so instead of the term slavery, maybe African Holocaust or something?
Holocaust, we could use the word Holocaust or Holocaust. We've got Ma'afa as well, which is the Swahili term for great disaster. We have the Maangamizi as well, which is another key Swahili term. But I would prefer, in order to capture the attention of as many Africans as possible, I would say African Enslavement Day.
I like the thinking. There was a brother called, there's a brother called Nathaniel Tobias Coleman, and he started an MA program called White Power at UCL. It was a fantastic program, and it did exactly what you said. UCL in the end decided that they weren't going to run with it, and the reason they're going to run with it, their argument was it was too strong and people aren't quite ready for such a program. I think that you make a very good point. The issue is, though, we've got to be mindful that we don't put our energy into building up more history, even if it's negative history, on their institutions. We have so much work to do on just lifting up ourselves and learning about ourselves, about our history before, after, during, after, all these kind of things that are going on. If we did an event focused on white supremacy, 'cause that's what it would be really, it would be the White Supremacy Remembrance Day. If we did that, we're almost not endorsing it, but we're building it. We're making it stronger, and I'm opposed to that. So I'm much more for African remembrance, anything that remembers like heritage and culture, and then we place the context of what others have done to us in the slot that we allocate for it. But we don't have an event about them, and then we are the byproduct to what they've done. The problem with doing it that way is that they become the primary focus, and we become secondary, and we ain't got time for that.
It's an interesting one. I've not ever heard anyone kind of question it in that way of potentially turning it on its head. I don't know. I think the term slavery, it will always have its kind of connotations. There's always going to be something that it pulls up in people. I think slavery in a term it's not only an African thing, really. Although we've had the biggest Holocaust in slavery exists. It's about someone having power over someone else and utilizing them in an abusive manner, and it exists across the world. I think it would be a good idea to maybe try and push the onus, if that's the way you'd say it, to consider using a different term to make people think about what is it that they done rather than the people themselves. It's an idea, but I'm in an R-in.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Personally, I don't think that's the biggest issue. I don't think that's even an issue that we should be considering, because I think there's a lot of people, even that when you do change the name, a lot of people still bring in their old thought patterns. I don't think it's going to necessarily change people's thought patterns. And if we switch it to such a thing like, for example, like you said, the white wickedness day, I think it might attract the wrong type of attention. And personally, I'm just tired of kind of putting the blame on Europeans and asking them for things and trying to, evoke certain emotions from them. I think we should just concentrate on ourselves and the actions and the behavior. Yeah, because it's just not, there's a lot in the name, but there's more in the action than the thought pattern. Do you see what I'm saying? And I don't necessarily think changing the name will change the thought pattern.
I mean, I've had this conversation before, and there are two reasons why we've chosen the name Slavery Remembrance. One, because we're here to highlight International Slavery Remembrance Day, and we don't want anyone else hijacking that and then using it for their own agenda and changing the dialogue and turning and changing our stories. So we've got that. And the second reason is also because slavery isn't spoken about. It's sort of whitewashed out of history. People they want to pretend like it didn't happen, or they want to ignore it. It's largely ignored. And the fact that it changed the shape of the world we see today, pretty much the entire world, it had an effect on pretty much the entire world. How do you sideline that part of history, that massive part of history? But if you start using terms that people don't understand, like Ma'angamizi or Ma'afa, you're instantly locking people off, or you're trying to get people to open their minds to things that they don't necessarily want to know about and certainly don't really understand the history of, and then you use terminology that is foreign to them, you're instantly placing blocks. So I think once we've got to a stage where people are at a level where they're starting to be receptive to having the conversation about the transatlantic slave trade, we can then start introducing new terminology, but we have to be mindful about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I would also like to just pick on the point you mentioned about the fact that there could have been more people here. What I'd like to share with you is that on our Facebook event page, the event was shared with over 3,400 people. So that was invited by other people. So over 3,400 people were invited, and it was 200 and something said they were attending, and 300 and something said they were interested. And the turnout was amazing. I'm so proud of the people that came. I am so proud, and I thank everyone for coming. Without, this is all about reunity, but it certainly wasn't 3,400. And I've run another organisation which is a big party. Or another event, which is a big party, and the numbers, everyone is going, everyone is turning out, and we need to be conscious. We cannot be armchair bandits or armchair activists and talk doesn't get us anywhere. Enough of the talk, and it's more about start the action, and that's another reason why this came about. I don't do the talking, it's about action, and everyone else needs to step up too. This isn't a one-person fight, this isn't a one organisation. We all need to step up the game now. There's things happening. We've got the Black Lives Matter. Then this has all happened around the same time, and I started this in February, having no idea what was about to kick off. This is a great time. There's something in the air, but we need to make sure we grab hold of it and use it properly. There's no time for complacency, and there's no time for foolishness. People need to step up and do things right. It's been going on for way too long.
No. I tell you why. Because, okay, first of all, give thanks, brother, for allowing me the opportunity to speak on independent black television. It's extremely important. The reason being that if we're going to look at Europeans, we've also got to remember the Arab slave trade. Okay? Now, in my book, I've got a whole chapter on reparations. I was just saying already today that it can be quite difficult sometimes if I'm speaking to someone my age who doesn't know the first thing about reparations, or speaking to a senior citizen who also doesn't know reparations history. Now, there's a load of reasons why they don't know that. And we know that the curriculum here is it's Eurocentric, and if they teach anything about slavery, they'll just say, basically black people were like, hands up, I'm going. Do you know what I'm saying? Take me from Africa and, civilize me, enslave me, whatever, and all that kind of thing. The reason why I think that would be wrong is because I remember hearing a Black Panther, I can't think of the brother's name right now, but he said the issue of our enslavement is so sensitive, and we also have to be mindful of the black collaborators within that. So I think if we take the emphasis over to the European, we're giving too much projection to their involvement, and we're missing the bigger picture, because reparations is about self-repair. And although I think we are correct to identify the involvement of Europeans, because without question, it was sanctioned by Elizabeth I. I identify this in my book. Okay, so if we were really to get to the nitty-gritty, we could say, well, actually, this is about certain people and organizations.
Okay.
Right? So I think that could create more difficulties than are necessary, and I think it's the sort of thing perhaps we need to have a private community discussion about first, to look at the benefits or disadvantages of taking that particular angle.
Okay.
Well, it's a great question, and I think it was covered as well on stage by Toyin Agbetu, who he did mention about not liking, and so did Sister Toya RBG, who's big up that sister as well. It's not. Yes, exactly. It's not about remembering slavery remembrances in a sense, because that implies that we were always born to be slaves, when actually the correct terminology should be enslaved peoples, because that's what we were. And I think internationally, what they've arranged, the UNESCO, I think it is, who arranged that the 23rd of August be the day that be put internationally to remember slavery. It's about tackling these crimes against humanity, and I think you're right, we can't just kind of just have this day imposed upon us, which can often really make us feel weak, vulnerable and powerless.
It's about the attitude we take towards it, and an attitude like today's, where we were very much empowered in who we are as African people, and we educated the crowd. The audience knew and understood that we're not talking from a stance where we're begging any sort of reparations or begging anything from anyone, or acknowledgement. We are saying we want to represent our ancestors. We want to give them a day where we think of them and all that they went through, because our ancestors are in us and we are in them. So that day, or today, is about us acknowledging them. That's what we take it to mean, rather than feeling of a position of weakness or powerlessness or anything like that.
Okay. And do you concur?
I do concur completely.
All right. Well, that's enough said there. You set it all up.
Okay. We want to rise up the Queen that made this all possible today. All the hard work she put in. Can we give the energy for the sister we're about to introduce, who's created this big stage and made this day possible? Can we rise up Sister Shazam?
Greetings. I'm going to make this really short. So all I want to say is power to all of you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. Please salute me back. When you see someone salute you, please salute them back. Okay. Yeah, power to all of us. We're reunited. Yes? We don't deal with unity. Unity implies that we were never united in the first place, and we know we were. Reunity we call for. So to find out more about this organization, it's very new. SlaveryRemembrance.org. Sign up to our newsletter and see what's happening and where we're going. Volunteer with us, get involved. SlaveryRemembrance.org. I love you all. Bye-bye and thank you.
Take a look at the world, your world, your world. Tell me what you see. There's so much trouble and problems, universally. But I and I them sight up, within I prophecy. So when it comes to certain situations, I've got to be ready, for these are signs of the time. I want to know who these are signs of the time. Life experience teach I saw. Oh, these are signs of the time. So let's say know who these are signs of the time. Yeah, but the spirit of the flow. Now the whole wide world is crying to be free. But there are certain individuals who take their God for money. So if you turn capitalist, how can we break the chain? It's like a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. These are signs of the time. Man and mind changing. I want you to know these are signs of the time. Brothers, life experience teach I so. These are signs of the time. Revelation. Gosh, so last I know who these are signs of the times. Yeah. But the spirit of the flow. Brothers against brothers. be surprised. Oh, yeah. Or if it's pestilence and famine, still there's time to realize. And when there's storms and floods, with earthquake and fire, we will be treading through this Armageddon with courage and faith in Jah. These are signs of the times. Signs of the times. That's all. I want to know who these are signs of the times. Signs, revelation, man. Life experience teach I so. Oh, these are signs of the times. Signs of the times. So let's say now these are signs of the times. But your spirit of free flow. Signs of the times. Don't ask no question why. Whoa, it's just prophecy. All over the world, global, all over. Hey, take a look at the world. What do you see? So much trouble, strife and problems.